The situation on the ground in Ukraine is getting even more desperate. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has urged U.S. President Joe Biden and leaders of the other G7 industrialized countries for further support for his country. Now, there's been calls for de-escalation as the situation worsens on the ground. Meanwhile, concerns are also growing over the safety of Zap-Ar-Ruja nuclear power plant in Ukraine after shelling caused the plant to disconnect from the electricity grid. Let's now speak to our correspondent, Trent Murray, for more on this. Trent, what is happening on the ground? Are you safe?
Look, I am safe right now here in the Ukrainian capital. We are very well set up here with a very good team, including some very wonderful Ukrainian people who are looking after us. And we have a bomb shelter just underneath where I'm standing in case that air raid siren goes off. We've had it 4 times in the past day, so you always got an eye on the door ready to go if you need to. But there are definitely concerns a little bit further away from where I am, down near the fighting at that Zap-Ar-Ruja nuclear power plant, which you said pronounced it perfectly, I have to say, because that plant this morning was disconnected from the electricity grid about 9 a.m. local time, so that's 8 a.m. Joburg time, after shelling struck some of the power lines. Now, the reason that's really significant is because a nuclear power plant needs an external electricity supply in order to cool the generators inside, the reactors, I should say. So we understand that when it was disconnected, those emergency generators were able to kick in immediately. They use diesel fuel to operate. They've only got 10 days worth of diesel in them. The Ukrainians are saying they've tried to send more diesel there to get to the generators to make sure there is no risk of a nuclear meltdown. But they are saying the Russian military isn't letting them near the site because the Russian military still does control it. So as you might imagine, a lot of alarm bells being sounded right now. It's the second time the plant has been disconnected in the past 5 days. Experts say it's extremely important that it gets reconnected straight away. Otherwise, there is a really real risk of a radioactive emergency.
And Trent, we've also seen some other media houses pulling their teams. Are there any evacuation plans in place?
Some media outlets are certainly reassessing the situation. We are in constant contact here with experts on the ground. What they will tell you from a personal safety perspective is that obviously the situation has changed dramatically as of Monday. That is when really Russia upped the ante, if you will, in this fight and fired off 81 cruise missiles at cities right across the country, including here in the centre of Kyiv. Now, we've not seen that here in Kyiv really since the beginning of the war, not missiles striking right in the very city centre. Air raid sirens again were going off, but it seems that a lot of people were caught off guard, perhaps a little bit complacent because we haven't really seen fighting come to the very heart of the country's capital before. And so right now there is a lot of reassessments taking place because the Russians are making no secret of the fact that they are going to continue these barrages of cruise missiles in order to really try and pile pressure on the Ukrainians. We understand the number one target right now for them is electricity plants. They have damaged about 30% of the country's electricity grid. It seems there is a concerted effort underway to try and interrupt electricity supplies, rolling blackouts across much of the country as a result.
And I mean, I was, even watching you report at some point this weekend how you had to even, run for cover and all of that. I wonder, as, everyone is reassessing the situation, the media houses getting experts to give you some kind of, guidance here on what to do. Could we see more media houses pulling out during the course of the week?
Look, I think it's very likely because the advice is always moving. It's always fluid. We are certainly having that conversation, I have to say. I don't think that there's any problem with saying that publicly because in these types of situations, obviously safety is the number one concern for everyone, and covering this story is very, very important, but we all need to make sure that we do it in a safe way. What I will tell you is that the Ukrainians that I speak to here are really resolute in saying that they're not going to be frightened by this, that they feel like what's happening is that because they're having some quite big successes on the battlefield, it seems that the Kremlin is trying to respond by somewhat terrorising the population, if you will, by trying to frighten them, striking things like schools and kindergartens and universities, and even a car dealership was struck yesterday, electricity plants, as I say. They're clearly not military targets, and so there is a sense here that there is an effort to scare them, but they say, look, we won't be scared. Our troops are doing a really good job trying to claim back territory. We're going to continue to support them, and it's really what happens on the battlefield that counts, and there we very much have the momentum.
Trent, please stay safe, and we'll continue to touch base with you to see how the situation is on the ground, especially because, even President Zelenskyy also appealing for more assistance, for the Ukraine. And of course, that's Trent Murray there, our correspondent, coming to us live from, the Ukraine. And you can only imagine how the situation is right there on the ground as he talks about how now they are re-evaluating their options to see whether or not to stay on. So certainly a lot of concern there.